Okay. Here, let me see.
All right, we're live. Welcome,
Okay.
Denise. How are you?
I'm okay, Carrie. Technical difficulties, but we're going to master them.
We are. Like so many other things we like to master. It's all going to be great. So welcome, everybody. I'm Carrie, and this is Denise on her cell phone. So she's got a whole different look today, which is great. We are the duo that brings to you What's the Takeaway. We've been friends for years. We've been business partners in many fun pursuits, but our biggest passion is doTERRA essential oils. And we've been doing that for almost 10 years, which is really, really exciting. And before that, we were doing natural healthcare together too for almost, I think, 7 years. So it's been a lifelong pursuit and friendship. And we've raised our kids together. And when we were trying to think of what would be a fun project for us to work on, we came across the idea of doing a podcast based on the one thing that both of us do routinely when we're trying to get the most out of something. And that is actually to remove something, not to add something or learn something or take another class or buy another book, although we're big book buyers. We do love our books, but we realize that sometimes the reason you're not getting what you want is that everything is so cluttered and cloudy. And so whether this is a physical space that you're trying to organize, an emotional space, a mental space, a physical space, a health space, it always works in this way. So that's What's the Takeaway was born from. And we are really excited because we just kicked off a very exciting series of classes for you on something called Radical Age Reversal. And this is relatively new science. They have been doing metabolic science for a really long time, but it's just now coming into its own. It's getting the attention that it deserves. And we thought it would be awesome for us to bring this to you because 93% of Americans are suffering from some type of cardiometabolic disease, which is going to lead to a whole host of problems. So today we're going to focus in. Last week we did an overview of the plan. So if you didn't see that show, go back and watch the show. Today we're going to talk about your body weight. So not just whether you want to lose weight, but what does the weight look like? Is it muscle? Is it fat? Is it healthy? Is it not? And how to really get you to the proper body weight, the proper amount of fat, and also to get your body to stop aging and start reversing your biological age. So you could be chronologically whatever age the calendar says, but internally, we really, really want you to get younger and younger. So Denise, what are our takeaways for this topic?
I'm so excited for this class, Carrie. So the takeaways are really terrific and everyone's going to love them. One of the things we want to do is take away the thought that if you're predisposed to something, that's familial or genetic, that you're automatically going to get it. We want you to take that off the table. Another one is take away the obesogens, and we'll get into that, but those are the chemicals that we allow or that surround us in our environment that we ingest every day that are not healthy for us. And the third one is take away the idea that you've already done permanent damage. There's always room for improvement.
All right. These are all really important. And something I think about all the time when it comes to weight. So just to full disclosure, you and I have been starting to implement some of the things we're going to talk about today about a month ago, right? Our company is coming out with a whole new line of products, a big plan for us to be able to enhance what we're going to teach you, right? So you can't out supplement a bad lifestyle, right? So you just can't out exercise it. You can't out diet it. You have to actually do this whole package. So we're in each of these classes, we're going to bring you all the things that you need to know. So let's start with the first takeaway, because to me, it's the one I think people like to latch onto, right? So this idea that it's genetic, it's in my family, I have no choice. I'm just sitting I'm just waiting because it's going to happen. So what's true or not true about that?
That's so hurts me when you say I'm just waiting for it to happen. That kind of thought is, or why it happens. Okay, so why you see a lot of more genetic things passed down is because we tend to live like our parents and their parents before them. So we eat similar foods, we get similar amounts of exercise and outdoor time, and maybe meditation. We handle our stress similarly. I mean, there are a lot of factors that go into not getting diseases that your family and relatives before you have had, and belief. There's a lot of belief that should be just rethought. Just reframe. That's it. Reframe how you feel about something your family has had happen in form of a genetic predisposition and disease for decades and not centuries, but generations, right?
Generations.
We
Right.
can totally clean that up. And this is the exciting part about what we've been reading, what doTERRA is bringing forward. And for me, Carrie, you talked about this science. It is new science that it's getting out to us. There have been, amazing researchers and physicians who have practiced and who have seen the real differences we can make in our lives. And I love that it's now coming into the mainstream because it's really important at this time.
Oh, I love that too. And the most exciting thing for me is that much of it is in our control. 95% of it is in our control. So I love what you said though. It makes a lot of sense, right? Like we eat the same foods that our parents cooked for us. And, if your parents exercised, you probably do too, or maybe not, maybe you did the opposite. But I think your environment really, really influences you. And of course, your family is going to be a big part of your environment. I know that one of the things that really turned me off as a kid was smoking. Both of my parents were smokers. And from a very early age, I just didn't like it. I didn't like the smell. It made me nauseous. So it was actually a good lesson for me because unlike my friends who didn't have parents who smoked, they were curious about it, right? And they may have actually turned into smokers because the lure of it, they didn't see the downside the way I saw the downside. So I think being mindful of some of the habits that are around you and learning about what's going on, right? Like what kinds of things have you done differently from the way you grew up?
So my parents eat a really good diet. They always have. And we've always been cognizant of, the kinds of drinks we drink in terms of soft drinks, soft sodas and juices and things like that. So that's not really, the food isn't really the thing. I would say that besides, golfing, which they both did and do, well, they both did now, they didn't really exercise. There wasn't a lot of communing with nature. And you and I know how important that is. It's important to get your 20 minutes of vitamin D out in the sun, at least, right? At least
Right.
20, maybe 30 minutes. And it's important to exercise. It's important really to strengthen your muscles. So that's what I'm working on right now. I'm really working on just becoming stronger. And, my family does not overeat. We just don't. And that was never the thing. And we ate 3 times a day. There wasn't snacks. Don't you remember your mom? Maybe your mom didn't, but my mom always said, don't eat right now. You're going to ruin your dinner. You'll spoil your dinner, right? You'll be too full. So there's not a lot of that, but there wasn't a lot of attention paid to really building muscle and keeping strong as we age.
Well, it's funny. I sort of had the opposite of you. My mother loved snacks. So we had lots of snacks as a kid, actually. And I think she was enamored with this idea of packaged foods and things that were easy, right? Because she saw her mother struggle to make homemade things all the time. So this kind of revolution of prepackaged food in the 1970s was, all the rage. And I think she jumped on that trend. The other trend that ran through my house was the diet trend. Now, I don't know about you, but I was a chubby kid and I really, really struggled with weight in high school. And I remember always being on a diet of some kind and never really, I honestly never losing weight, never losing weight. And I'll give you a dirty little secret that I remember right from my childhood. And that was once my mother bribed me to lose weight with a bag of Reese's Pieces. They had just come out on the market. It was a brand new product. I mean, it's just so funny, right? So she took something that she thought I would really love because I love peanut butter and chocolate. Like, what would be worse? What's so bad with that?
Nothing could be bad with that.
Nothing's bad with that, right? And especially in a bite-sized piece that you can just pop in your mouth, right? And it doesn't melt in your hands. Now I sound like a commercial. But guess what? It didn't work, right? It didn't work because it was the wrong plan with the wrong motivation and the wrong reward, right? So what I love about what we're doing in this plan is that we're really, really being able to look at, I think we've had 100 years of diet science, don't you think? If you look back at all the
Sure.
diets.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
And I think I've definitely
Yeah.
tried most of them, if
few.
not
Mhm.
all of them. So what would you say, in your opinion, is the most important thing that people need to know about the foods we need to eat for reversing our age? Like, what are we really, really trying to get to when it comes to picking the right diet? Like, how do you know? How do you really know?
First of all, I do think we're not all the same. And so not every diet is going to help, or life change is going to help. It may help eventually, but there's probably a trigger for all of us that once that trigger set, then maybe you can drop some weight. And I think the trigger is insulin resistance, which we'll get into. But once that's set, I think we'll be able to drop weight. But I think if we get as close to the earth as possible when we're choosing our foods, it's a really good place to start, because we were going to talk about obesogens, right? And they're just, they're everywhere. They're so intrusive. And that's part of our environment, right? Anything we think about, what we drink and what it comes out of, we should be sticking to water, right? And so it's really cool because, and I'm just going to go off into obesogens for a second. And
no, that's great. Yeah.
Okay. So, many doctors who deal with overweight people are now addressing truly that there's a science of obesogens, and these are foreign and foreign oils, foreign plastics, foreign chemicals, right, that go in our body, and our body has no way of understanding how to deal with them. So what happens? They get stored in fat, right? And they disrupt. A lot of these are endocrine disrupting chemicals, right? Man-made, and they alter they're altering how our body operates. And that's a problem. When that becomes too much for us, our bodies just stop. And this is what we're talking about, this metabolic syndrome that we're talking about. There are, so PBAs, right? All our plastics, types of phthalates, a lot of cleaning products, a lot of our personal care products, parabens, oxybenzone, all of these things disrupt our endocrine. And when that happens, we don't function. All of our hormones then go off. And insulin is a hormone. So we are really looking, if we were looking for the body that regulates these, we'll be waiting a long time because they're not regulating them, and it is a problem. So what were you thinking?
Yeah, no, I just, I'm so excited to talk about insulin resistance. So let's go to that next, but just kind of to step back and review. So everybody's going to be on a slightly different diet plan in this, right? So when we're talking about radical age reversal, and we're talking about cardiometabolic syndrome, when we're talking about aging, talking about insulin resistance. So those are the big three. So we're going to break those down. But cardiometabolic syndrome, aging, and insulin resistance have all led to really our body's not functioning at their optimal level and aging too quickly. And then it leads to all these horrible diseases like COPD and cardiovascular disease and diabetes and cancers and all of those PCOS. I think you named a whole bunch of them. All right. So then there's like these two camps in our environment, right? Because we're taking away the idea that it's genetic. That's our takeaway number one. So what are we left with? We're left with, how do I eat? What's the diet that's good for my body? And then what things in my environment do I really want to get rid of? So obesogens is what Denise just went over. We want to that's our takeaway number two. We want to take those out of the environment. So Denise, I'm new to this and you're going to walk into my home. I want you to you're going to pretend to open up my imaginary refrigerator. All right. Look around my imaginary house. And I want you to be a detective. Give me two foods that you want me to throw away, and then two maybe obesogens that I might not be aware of that I should just get rid of right now and not bring back into my house.
I can get rid of a whole closet or cabinet. Anything that's boxed. Anything that's boxed.
Anything is so food wise. So I should
Yep.
literally like avoid those aisles in the grocery store. So if I open up my cabinet, I've got boxes of crackers. I could have boxes of cereal. I have boxes of what about
Even
like
pastas
and noodles and stuff like that?
I mean, I can't even imagine what's in a mac and cheese box.
Okay.
Right? All of those food types are chemically laden. And
Okay.
our bodies do not know how to deal with them. And the other thing you have to worry about is like canned goods, unless they're organic and they say PBA free. That's really dangerous. PBA is very dangerous. So I really could say you could look at just those.
Okay. So I think for our audience, that's a really good start. And again, we don't want you to be overwhelmed and we don't want you to throw away, tons of food either necessarily. And I don't know, I'm going to say this and you're probably going to cringe, but I would say box it up and donate it, because something to eat for someone who doesn't have something to eat is better than it going into a landfill, correct?
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
But then going forward, I think we can make some better choices, or at least like seriously reduced the number of those foods that go into your day, if any, right? If any. All right. So what about on the obesogen side of like non-food items? What would you get rid of?
So definitely any single-use plastic water bottles.
Okay.
They really have to go. But then a lot of our personal care, like we were talking about before, look on the label. You do not want any phthalates. You do not, and cleaning products too have them. You do not want any oxybenzene. I mean, there are really horrific chemicals that we're putting on our heads next to our brain, right? To wash our hair. You want those products to be clean. And you can we always tell people, go to ewg.gov, which is Environmental Workers Group.gov, and put the product in and see where it's ranked, and it will let you know. And then go ahead and look at, personal care products on that to see what might be a better product for you and your family.
Yeah, I love my lipstick, but I make sure that I buy something that when I look it up on ewg.org, that it's literally all green, right? Because it's going to give you these numbers and colors. So you want to stay out of the yellows and the reds as much as possible. And those green products are really good. I'm just going to give a plug for the doTERRA shampoo and conditioner. It's fabulous. And it's all green. Like when you go to EWG, all of the ingredients light up green, which means go ahead. You're good to go for that. Yeah. So unfortunately, we don't have a cosmetic line. That would be really nice too. But we certainly do have things like lotions and toners, and those go very, very close to your skin and to your scalp. So ladies, especially, watch what you're putting on your face and on your scalp, because it can actually contribute to gaining weight, right? And having fat on your body that's really hard to break down. All right, let's spend a minute on insulin resistance so that we can get to our third takeaway. And we're just going to kind of wrap it up probably for today. But insulin resistance, you want to tell us what that's about?
So I want to give you 4 factors that you probably are insulin resistant if you have any of these, right?
Oh, this is great. Okay.
Right. So the 4 risk factors are high blood pressure,
Okay.
high blood sugar.
Okay. So that's diabetes or high blood sugar. Okay.
Abnormal cholesterol rates or levels.
Okay.
And a really excessive amount of body fat, right? Visceral, adiposal fat on your belly. So that would be 45 inches for a man and 35 inches for a woman.
All right.
If you have any, they actually say 2 of these 4, you definitely have to worry about insulin resistance. But if your numbers are close on 1 or 2 of these, now's the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I would think I used to be. I'm pretty sure I'm not right now. I'm hoping, but I'm pretty sure that when I was, like I said, when I was in high school and I couldn't lose any weight, I think I must have been insulin resistant. And it's interesting.
Very possible.
I don't think anybody would have tested me.
The thing is, but they didn't test for insulin, and that's the problem.
Right.
They test for blood glucose. If they tested for insulin, we would, many of us, our numbers would be up 10 or 15 years before we were insulin resistant. And then we'd have time to work on it or not. I mean, it is a choice.
Sure.
But you and I, we're bringing everyone along with us who, want to lower that and live really healthy lives, long lives. So what the really interesting thing is, 1 in like 3 people are insulin resistant. And when you do it, when you're 65 or older, it's 1 in every 2.
Yeah.
That's shocking.
What's interesting about that statistic, and I bet there's a correlation, and I just read this, that if you're over 65 and you break a bone, your mortality rate goes up 50%.
Yeah.
So I believe there's actually a connection between people who break bones and those that are insulin resistant. We'll have to look into that.
Well, and again, if you're building muscle, you're strengthening your bones. So it's all tied together, which is what's so fascinating. But so we want to, if ask me again what I take out of, our, look at the sugars, just be cognizant of that, because sugars are hidden in, there's a list of 4 names, but they think there's up to 300 different. So, but look at the percentage, the grams, because if you're diabetic, 9 grams and below are acceptable. If you pick up one of the drinks to go along with your sandwich at a deli, look at the back, you'll be shocked. If it's 26, that's good, because we've seen them as high as 54%.
That's
54 grams.
54 grams. That's a lot of sugar. Yeah, that's a lot of sugar.
We don't need that.
I love that. Don't drink sweet, right? Don't drink your sugar. You don't need to do that. You need, drinking is really either for hydration or, now there are all these sour drinks. Like I like to put a lemon essential oil into my water because that's actually going to slow down that glucose response and it's going to actually improve the insulin response. So that's a good thing. Things like apple cider vinegar, kimchi, fermented foods, all of those things. And some of them come in liquids, like those liquids are, kombucha, those liquids are good for you to drink, especially if you've had a lot of carbohydrates, because it's going to help slow down the glucose response.
Which is awesome. So real quick on insulin background, right? What is it?
Yeah.
Because it's really important to know this. Insulin is a hormone, which I don't know if people know, and it really helps our glucose in our blood, to stay within normal ranges. And it does this by taking glucose, moving it into cells throughout your body. Makes perfect sense.
It
the
does.
cells use the glucose for energy and store excess, and store excess in your liver, your muscles, and your fat tissue. So just know that when we experience stress, all of our hormones with insulin's intricately tied to all of our stress hormones. And wow, it holds even more. What you don't want is that need for more and more and more, and your pancreas finally not be able to send out enough insulin. And that's when you become insulin resistant. You want to make sure that the insulin is taking up, in your muscle. And we start to use the blood sugar in our muscle and not just in our blood or the sugar, right? We want the glucose from different places in our body. We don't want it just to be in our blood. Again, another reason to work out, another reason to eat really clean, and watch sugars. What do you think about that whole process?
Yeah, well, here's what it reminds me of. I love to run. I'm not like a speed runner, but I really enjoy the art of running. And so when my kids were little, I would bring them out and say, hey, come running with mom. And sometimes they'd ride their bicycles. And then as my son was growing up, he obviously got off his bike and he would run with me and we would be at the same pace. And then there was this time when he just outpaced me and he just blew by me, and it didn't matter how hard I tried, I couldn't keep up with him. And that's what I think of with insulin resistance. Like, yeah, when my body was young and my son, who in this scenario is the pancreas, right, was young, and I'm the pancreas, sorry. When my son was the sugar, when my son was young, I could keep up with that sugar, right? I could keep up with him because we could keep the range in homeostasis. He would run a certain amount, I could run a certain amount, we could keep pace with each other, right? But then there was a point where I just couldn't keep up because he just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And I think that's a point that people don't quite understand about eating, is that when your sugar content and your carbohydrate content just gets to be so high, your body can't keep up with that because it was never ever designed for processed foods, right? That's just not natural. So just think, anything that's not natural, your body wasn't designed to handle. And so although it can adapt and rise to the occasion, there's a breaking point. And then, so that's sort of the insulin resistance just from too much sugar. Now let's go to obesogens for a second. Now, obesogens are interrupting signals. So let's just say that the sugar, when it goes into the blood, sends out a signal to, like almost like shouting, right, to the pancreas to produce insulin. If it can't hear, it won't produce. And the obesogen basically blocks the sound, blocks the transfer of the signal, right? So we've got too much processed foods, too many chemicals in our diet, too many sugars in the diet. Now we've got too many obesogens. And you can see where it starts to really, really unravel. And then you age because it's just too hard to keep up, right?
Yeah, you age, you start to break down.
You start to break down, yeah, for sure.
And
so
is that root problem.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of bad things now that I'm looking at what causes aging. I've done a lot of things to probably create aging in my body. So am I a hopeless case, Denise? Like, is this it? Is it?
Oh, I never believe that, Carrie. But the book, everything we're reading and all the physicians and researchers that we're following are saying that is not the case.
Right. So that's going to be a big takeaway from a lot of people. It doesn't matter where you are. It just matters that you start to learn and look and utilize some of these things that we're going to teach you, right? So you can take away this fear that you're permanently broken.
Yeah. Yeah. We can course correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you may have to really do a hard turn depending on where you are along this curve, right? Some Americans have as many as 5 age-related diseases. That's a lot, right? 41% actually, 41% of Americans have 5 or more cardiometabolic diseases. So those 41% are going to have to actually course correct a little sharper.
That's mind blowing to me, that number.
Yeah.
That number. Well, and you and I talked about this, right? In terms of how many, medicines our aging parents are on or not. And it's an interesting review for us because we can still change things. We can do things that are better for us. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah, and I have to say that was super surprising to me because I thought, oh, well, if you get cholesterol issues when you get older, that's just what happens when you age and you take a medicine and you're fine. But it's, what doctors are describing now is whack-a-mole medicine, right? Like you hit one problem and then another one pops up, right? And you hit that problem, then another one pops up. So it's not a fix the way I really hoped it would be. And I think some people are like, oh, if I have diabetes, I just take diabetic medication. If I have cholesterol, I take cholesterol medication. But all of these lead to side effects and other problems. And it really, really does become complicated. We don't really want to be on those drugs, right?
No.
Yeah, we want to actually create a lifestyle that prevents us from getting to that point.
Correct. Well, we want to stop it altogether, right? We just
Right.
want to make sure that we actually don't have to be on a course of medications and live on them for the rest of our lives. When we talk about longevity, for us, that means true quality of life and vitality. It does
100%.
does not mean extending our lives because we're on, a dozen medications.
Exactly. All right. So we have to wrap up the show today. I'm going to ask you, Denise, which of the 3 takeaways are you going to start with?
It's so hard, but I think I'm still going to work on obesogens that are in my area. Right? How about you?
Well, I still have, I think, some of that mental fatigue of all of the bad diets that didn't work from when I was a kid. So I'm going to take away the idea that I've created permanent damage in my life and that I can start today and do some good things. And I have to say, in the 38 days that we've been doing this, I have seen some really good turnarounds, and we'll talk about that in later shows. But it is working. I want everybody to have hope, and it's a really good thing to do. So, all right, we'll see you next week.
I totally agree.
Excellent.
No, I totally agree.
Then we'll see you next week on What's the